Right, to the Washington Examiner's Sarah Westwood, the Weekly Standard senior writer Mike Warren. Again, what this shakeup talk is about, guys, you know far better than I, is that it's not going to be one person that might go. It might be a whole bunch of people. Sean Spicer is always on that list. But we see Steve Bannon and possibly Reince Priebus, and on we go. But what I always wonder about this stuff, Sarah, is whether it does the trick, or whether a shakeup, certainly of that magnitude, would make much of a difference. What do you think?
Well, certainly we've seen cases within the Trump administration where a staff shakeup has made a dramatic impact, and the most notable is the National Security Council. Once H.R. McMaster was brought in as President Trump's national security advisor, we saw the national security operation and in a lot of ways the foreign policy operation become much more professional. It's the most smoothly run aspect of the Trump White House, and from Syria to North Korea, the president's actions have been applauded. So we know that when the president is being well served by his staff, that can make a huge difference in how policy outcomes are perceived. That could potentially be the case if he made a shift in his communications shop, that we could see some of these messages transmitted to reporters a little more smoothly. You know,
that depends, though, Michael, on the president then listening to this new group if it comes to that. Because he's his own man, and that has gotten him to live in that house. So, you know, touche to him. He got where he is because of that ability to trust his gut and go his own way here. But it gets in the way sometimes of initiatives that otherwise would be very popular with folks. For example, his Wall Street agenda. Very popular with Wall Street, very popular with investors, and very hopeful for a crowd that wants to see them get done. But they all, to a man or woman, you know, sort of wince at how he gets sidetracked. So doesn't a lot of this depend on how willing he is to listen to whoever he brings in?
Yeah, I think so. There was a couple months ago, a senior White House aide told me something that I think about all the time, which was, with this president, you never know. And that's definitely a feeling you have in the West Wing. People sort of have this idea that, well, is he going to be listening to this particular person or this particular report? And so I'm sort of greeting this news that there's a possible shakeup here with that level of skepticism. Could the president sort of clean house and start fresh with some new group of people? Maybe, or he may hear all this coverage of us talking about a shakeup and think, no, I got to stick with the people I have. You just never know with this president, and you never know if, to your original question, if a shakeup would change anything, because ultimately it's all about the principle at the top, and he really sets the agenda and sets the tone for how the rest of the White House and the rest of the administration acts.
Yeah, and again, you know, his instinct is good on a lot of stuff. Getting him into that house, the White House, was very instrumental. But I am curious, Sarah, where you see this going, because some people read a wholesale change in the key staff as a sign that there's panic there. I remember Richard Nixon, for example, when he got reelected, asked for his entire cabinet to submit their resignations. He only ultimately replaced a few, but down the road it set off a great antipathy among senior staff and the like, who felt that the president was abandoning them, and then they were leaking stuff, not so friendly or nice stuff, about him afterwards. How do you avoid that?
Well, certainly we've been hearing these rumors that a shakeup of certain key positions is imminent since really the beginning. We've heard that Reince Priebus was on the bubble. At different times we've heard Steve Bannon is on the bubble. Even Sean Spicer getting fired. That's been a rumor that's been circulated repeatedly. And none of that has come to fruition. And you have to wonder sometimes if those providing leaks about specific individuals are motivated by a desire to solidify their own positions. And you're right, this shakeup has a thing that presidents have done in the past. Bill Clinton notably shook up his West Wing staff after he had a rough start to his presidency.
Yeah, they all do.
President Trump would be in good company. Right, it happens. And so the question is whether this is really a sign of desperation on the part of the administration, or if this is just an acknowledgement from President Trump that what he's doing hasn't been successful, and that potentially with another team he could notch some of those successes.
How likely do you think any of this is, Michael?
Honestly, Neil, I have no idea. I mean, it really could be anything.
Yeah.
But you know, I do think that that the president is looking at the last week, particularly with his decision to fire James Comey and the sort of communication strategy or lack thereof for that and thinking maybe I can do better with a different team. But I would look at it from the other perspective, which is think about what these communications staffers have to deal with. The fact that the president really makes this decision without bringing any of them in or giving them any, sort of forewarning about this, and the communications team really having to scramble. That's a big problem, and I think that even if you change staffs, if at the top or the culture in the White House is sort of to provide varying answers, varying messages, and not sticking to one simple message, again, the staffing is not going to matter as much as the principle and the culture at the top.
Yeah, I agree with you both on that angle. And by the way, the media, if you're going to cater to the media, try to make them happy because they'll never be happy. Guys, thank you both very much. Think of all the criticism of Abraham Lincoln, right, guys? At that time, the media was all over him for constantly going through generals like tissue paper. But I think Lincoln turned out okay. That's just my quick read on it. And I remember covering that presidency very, very well.